Waymo's approach to self-driving has a few issues. Well, it may have some catastrophically huge issues, but it looks like they might just be on the right track. We will see. Time will tell. But a new study is out that says self-driving Waymos are actually more expensive than taxis, take twice as long. Are they any good? Well, it may surprise you, but I'm going to come out a little bit in defense of Waymo on this one. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So this is a crazy one. Saw this article, figured it needed some attention. It's a very sensational headline. Well, they're more expensive than taxis. They take twice as long. How could that be? Well, are autonomous taxis the way to go? We'll just get into it here. Are they the way to go? Currently, only if you like demonstrably poorer service for your buck. Come on. A new study conducted by Forbes. It's not a study, by the way. It's a collection of anecdotes. The plural of anecdote is not data, but it's okay. A leader reveals how Waymo, a leader in the robotaxi industry. It is a leader. You could argue that at the moment it is the leader. The Tesla Cybercab is not out. Tesla's self-driving network is not a thing as of yet. Many believe it will become so very soon, but until it does, well, we gotta take it for what it is. So Waymo's doing quite well in the US. China has many players that are doing their own thing. Zoox is demonstrating on the streets of Las Vegas already and expanding perhaps to San Francisco or LA, into California, I believe. But it still lags considerably behind human-driven ride-sharing services in two key transport metrics: time and money. Okay, over 50 rides. Not only were Waymo more expensive, but they took twice as long. By the way, how could they take twice as long? How? Why don't we start there? The first answer is public transport is a crazy thing. Buses are also slower than human drivers, but human drivers take risks that I would not accept from an autonomous service. They will cut people off. They will go above the speed limit in ways that I may not feel comfortable, but I let it slide because it's your car, man. If you want to wreck it, you do you. That's one way. But the other is the routes they chose, and we'll get to that in a second. The current status of autonomous vehicles means that cost and time-sensitive customers still choose rideshare. For the time, AVs will not be the low-cost solution. Forbes test compared rides offered by Waymo, UberX, and Lyft, and included various pickups and drop-offs from morning till evening. They were graded on the price at booking, quoted time to pick up, and estimated time of arrival. The autonomous vehicles performed worse in all respects. Across the 50 samples, 50 is a pretty small sample size, just going to say. The average human-driven ride was $28, while an identical Waymo ride was $9.50 more. Though, that didn't include a tip for the driver. So, assuming that you tip them 20%, then it's actually only $3.87 more. Look, I agree, Waymo is a little pricey for what it is, but their approach is pretty pricey. They start with a car that costs just as much as anything Uber or Lyft has to offer, and then they add $100,000 of sensors and computers and equipment. And then they have someone back at home base who's actually in charge of keeping this thing safe. So they still have an employee supervising the car. They just don't have them in the car. So they've got some big expenses to overcome. They're trying to scale. They're trying to hemorrhage less cash while still proving that this is a viable business model. I'm sure that their time between interventions is improving. I'm confident that it is. And as it does, they can perhaps lower prices or stop losing as much money. So the cost issue, I get it, but you can't take the without a tip price because humans expect a tip. Your rating will start to fall if you do not provide one. That's notable, but not necessarily deal-breaking. Speed is where the gap broadens. The average time for pickup in a Waymo was 7.2 minutes compared to 3.4 minutes for ride sharing. Well, yeah, there's not very many. They're still early in their rollout. Do you think that there are as many Waymos as Ubers and Lyfts? That's insane. That's ridiculous. Is that part of your time disparity? And most egregiously, the average trip time in a taxi, a robotaxi, was a glacial 33 minutes compared to half that in a staggering 120% difference. Okay, so the problem with part of this is a lot of the routes that they selected were distance routes where Uber and Lyft got on the highway and Waymo did not. So yes, if you're going during any kind of traffic hours and you're only taking surface streets, it's going to take longer. And if the time in the cab is part of the cost factor, then it's going to cost more. If these were all short drives, just in town, where no one would have taken the highway, I think the gap in both price and time would have closed. You see, the speed limit is the same for both vehicles. It's just that Google, so far, Waymo, does not use highways. I don't know why. You'd think that would be the easiest part to solve, but I think it's so that if there is an accident, it occurs at low speed. That's better, I suppose. They'll get there eventually, I imagine, but this is an unfair comparison. This isn't the most extensive study. It's not a study. It's not a study. And the jury's still out on how much autonomous rides will improve in the future, but as it stands, unless you enjoy the sheer novelty of being driven around by a robot, it's hard to make an argument for taking Waymo right now. So yeah, I think it's desperately unfair that you are comparing a tipped ride to an untipped ride, that you're comparing a long wait time for a vehicle that you know is in limited supply, is early in the rollout, and you're comparing rides that are not comparable rides. You know that Uber and Lyft will go on the highway, and you know that Waymo will not. And if you don't know that, this definitely isn't a study. I feel like you should have disclosed a bit more of your methodology, actually shown what the trips were so we could see it, but it's pretty ridiculous. It does mention here that robotaxis can only operate in specific cities where extensive manual mapping has been done by the company's engineers, while its cars can drive up to highway speeds. Some competitors don't. They do not drive on highways. They knew that going in. They did it anyway. And when they're talking about some who can't go highway speeds, that's Zoox they're talking about. Zoox is already in operation with a whole lot of teleoperation. We don't know the full extent of it, but it's a fair amount. So you have to weigh that as well. If Tesla reaches FSD at the end of 2025 and can activate a robotaxi network, the wait time will be shorter than than Waymo or Cruise or Zoox or any other company instantly. The day it becomes a real thing that you can really do commercially, the wait times will be the shortest. The commute times will be maybe a little slower than humans because humans will take risks that would not be acceptable from a machine. I don't love when my driver's driving like a maniac, but I understand that it's their car. I think they have more interest in not crashing it than I do. I've never felt life or death sorts of danger in a cab or, any kind of Uber or Lyft, but I have felt that I would not drive the way they do. So it's pretty insane to think about. By the way, guys, if you're not subscribed, pretty please do. If just half of the audience who is not subscribed would subscribe, my gosh, I'd be over 100,000 already. Help me out, would you please? Pretty please. And like the video, comment, mandatory. You guys know what you're doing. And everybody else, leave your comments. I want to know, what did I get wrong in this article? What did I blow it on this time? That came out not great. So, what did I miss? What did I misunderstand? Leave it into them comments below and stay tuned, stay juicy. And I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots when you're in your own clever robot.